Hello, hello, Sunrise Extra on a Thursday. How are you guys all doing? Remember, this is the show where we want to interact with you live, so please weigh in and comment. We love to share your name, give you a shout out here on the Sunrise Extra stream. So we're on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Yeah. If you are watching us, today's topic is, we get to use the touchscreen, you guys. Where do you stand on taking down statues, like Confederate statues or, racially insensitive statues, versus films or books dealing with racial injustice? And we're talking about this today because several Christopher Columbus, of course, which didn't have to do with Confederacy, but with Native Americans, several statues in Boston, Richmond, Virginia, and Minnesota were damaged or beheaded. Some were thrown into rivers. Many other across the country. Here is actually a map of all the Confederate statues. There are 771 of the states, of course, mostly centered in the South. Some of those statues were vandalized over the past week in this, George Floyd movement. Also, sparking a lot of controversy, old Megyn Kelly. So yesterday, she had this tweet. For the record, you could loathe bad cops, racism, sexism, bias against the LGBTQ community, and not censor historical movies, books, music, and art that don't portray those groups perfectly. People understand art reflects life. As we evolve, so do our cultural touchstones. So we're asking, what do you guys think of that? We've gotten, in 20 minutes, over 93 comments now.
I think I heard Rod chuckling at the beginning there, and I only think it's because you referred to her as old Megyn Kelly.
Well,
almost like old Mother Hubbard.
Megyn Kelly lost her job at the NBC because of a blackface controversy. Oh, sorry about that. And she, really struck a nerve yesterday on Twitter. A lot of people either, backing up her point of view. She's essentially arguing, okay, statues are a different thing because they almost kind of have a sense of reverence, Yeah.
So what was she saying the difference was?
She was saying, so HBO pulled off Gone with the Wind from their movie library, so you can't stream or watch it now on HBO Max. And she was arguing, okay, statues, maybe those are bad. Maybe a lot of those should be taken down that have, themes of racial injustice.
They represent something that we don't want represented.
Art forms, movies, and books should be treated differently. So we want to know, what do you guys think?
What are people saying? You said you got a ton of comments.
Yeah, we have gotten a ton of comments. So let's start with Sharon here. She says, taking down statues changes nothing that happened in the past. Films and books of the past are just that, the past. Future books and films could leave out all the fuel that keeps history repeating itself. Jody says, I'm sorry, it's part of history. Brian says it's sad. They're trying to change history by removing them, not by teaching about them. Kim says, put the statues in museums. It is history. I really wish Americans would stop and take a minute to think about how they treat other people and property and quit being offended by everything. The internet has made people too comfortable disrespecting strangers. Josh, with the wisdom, those who fail to look at the past will only repeat it. Let's see, learn from history. Okay, so here's Linda. Statues down, yes, take them down. They are to show honor and respect. History books and films are to remind us of our history so we do not repeat the horrific mistakes made.
Part of me does think, guys, on like the very first surface, that what is the difference, right? If something sparks racial connotations, whether it's a statue or a movie or a piece of artwork, then we should remove it because it doesn't stand for what this country should stand for. But I do see a difference in terms of like a statue that is placed in the center of your city, that is there to be seen by all who visit and all who walk by, versus a film that you have to sort of go out of your way to watch, and what's there. To me, it makes perfect sense to remove a statue from a prominent place in a city. If that statue we now recognize as not representing everything that we consider to be good about our country or our city, take the statue down. If it's going to have any sort of negative, if it's going to spark up any sort of negative connotation, remove the statue. But the movie I would leave alone. And then you have the choice to watch or not watch the movie, and then you can learn from the way something was presented in a movie, how we have changed, how we have come from that time. We're no longer doing some of the things that you obviously saw during the making of Gone with the Wind. I wouldn't change the movie. I would either choose to watch or not watch it, and if I was an HBO or some other channel, I would either show or choose to show or not show it. But I don't believe in necessarily altering the movies to make them more PC, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, you know, this, I was going to say, this may make me seem uneducated, and probably fairly so, but I feel like actually at times I've learned a lot about the horrors of racism by watching movies that depict that. And I would like to think, seeing those stories, which often are horrific, that it's given me a deep understanding of what unfortunately was the truth of life in parts of our country for many, many years. And so for me, I think that's actually been a learning tool that I would like to think makes me be a little bit more of a better person moving forward.
More well-rounded.
I think that that is absolutely...
kind of right there with maybe reading a book about history.
Right, and I think when you were talking about that, I'm not sure which movie you were thinking about, but 12 Years a Slave was one that really put the horrors of slavery first and foremost in everybody's mind, compared to Gone with the Wind, where you don't really learn much of anything about the way things really were. It was beautiful cinematically, the score, the sweep. I mean, there were a lot of things to it. There's something online that caught my eye this morning, and it's a video that juxtaposes Gone with the Wind versus 12 Years a Slave, and they're intercut. And really, it just shook me.
Really?
It shook me. It made me tear up because it was so awful. It was so dehumanizing when you look at the way it's portrayed. And it just got me. I'm like, oh.
Wow.
You know, I'm not suggesting that we ban it at all. I mean, I don't think that. But it's so, I guess when I saw it originally, in my experience, there never was any explanation of this is the way it really was. It was just kind of, oh, isn't this a great movie?
Right.
And the black people were very buffoonish and docile and all that. And it was just like grinning and shucking and grinning, as they used to call it. That's the thing that gets me.
You know, to a lesser degree.
If you actually teach it, and, you know, especially if it's a school setting. I guess I also remember back to my high school days when we read Huck Finn. And I think they talked in general, really generalities about the N-word in that book.
Right.
But I remember going into school every day and, ooh, inside, I didn't show it, but it was just like a stabbing.
Right.
And it was like so frickin' awkward. But nobody gave the big picture. And I think if you do that, it's fine. If you don't, I'm not sure we're learning anything really, other than, you know, I don't really know.
Not to the extent of Gone with the Wind, but I even remember in It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know if you recall, Brenda or Nina or Rob, when you watched that, they had the cook, the housekeeper, who was a black woman. And sort of very much that's still that jovial, like you were describing there, Brenda, as the woman who was in Gone with the Wind. And I just remember watching that movie for the first time a few years ago with our boys, and you know they don't even know what the concept of a housekeeper is, right? I mean, growing up, we watched the Brady Bunch. They had a housekeeper. I guess that was like normal back then. But today, I don't know anyone who has a housekeeper. And our boys are looking at this thinking like, who is that woman? Like, I don't understand this woman that's in their house, like doing the cooking and the cleaning, and she's black. Clearly, she is a different color than everyone else in the house. And I remember sitting there thinking, do I need to explain? Should I explain to them right now, like what this is, like? Because I did think, man, as they look at this, they, as these, you know, young, impressionable white boys, are looking, thinking, oh, I guess the black person does the cooking and the cleaning. Like, that's okay. And I don't know. It just struck me even as weird to watch it in It's a Wonderful Life. Like, innocent as it was back then, and I didn't think much of it when I was growing up watching the movie, I was looking at my kids thinking, are they watching this thinking, oh, I don't know anyone who was a housekeeper, but I guess if you have one, it's a black person. Whatever. Just a thought that crossed my mind as you were talking about Gone with the Wind there.
A couple more comments from our Facebook post, and you guys, I know you're weighing in, live with us. Keep doing that, and Drew and Brenda, help me out with those.
You got it.
Jenna Lee says, "Bring the statues down. Books and films should stay." Crystal Ann saying, "A statue is a thing of honor. These men deserve no honor. Take them down and let the history books record their lives." So I think there is, but Brenda, I mean, you really kind of put it in perspective. I would love to watch that. I know someone here on Twitter put the link to the video you were talking about between 12 Years of a Slave and Gone with the Wind. I have never seen Gone with the Wind. Drew and I were talking about that. And I didn't know until this morning, ignorantly, that the actress who plays one of the house servants in the movie was the very first black person ever to win an Oscar in 1939. So I mean, that's history. But I read the synopsis of the movie, and boy, it sounds like the most soap opera-y drama you could ever imagine.
It definitely is. So Vulture has an online article, and just talking about the actress Hattie McDaniel, who played the housekeeper. McDaniel, I'm just going to read it because I think it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
It says McDaniel has been viewed as a key step forward for black actors in the industry and a woman who put career success over the needs of her community. She's said to have famously quipped when then NAACP head Walter White critiqued her, "I would rather make $700 a week playing a maid than $7 being one." Her support for Gone with the Wind in the face of vehement questioning from the black community exists at a nexus of issues. The same can be said of Gone with the Wind itself, which both fails to acknowledge the lived reality of the slaves that made women like Scarlett's life possible, while also being a vehicle for McDaniel's success, right? So you've got kind of that confluence of things that are going on. Again, that's from a Vulture article this morning.
Hattie McWilliams won that Academy Award. She was not allowed to sit with the fellow cast members at the Oscar Awards that night. She had to sit at a table in a different room. And when the movie premiered, I was reading this morning, when the movie premiered in Atlanta, back then, she was not able to attend the premiere of the movie because of the segregation laws back then.
Yeah, I think it's complicated. I mean, I think it's complicated. It was definitely complicated. But I guess I would like to see us get to the point where we can acknowledge. We don't have to ban, but we can acknowledge and discuss. Because some people, I mean, on my Facebook page, I talk about this, and it seems to me, most people not, but some people just won't acknowledge that there's systemic racism. And they look at me and said, well, you got your dream of being a news anchor, as though two things can't exist in the same plane. So it's a complicated discussion because everybody's coming from their own perspective. And we don't all understand each other, and that's okay. We may never, but we still need to be able to talk about it.
We do have a lot of people weighing in this morning on the Sunrise Extra stream. Go ahead, Rod. Before I jump in with the comments, you can go ahead and give us your thoughts.
I'm enjoying our conversation. I do think it's important to at least mention the fact. I'm going to use the word majority because I think that's probably correct. The majority of Hollywood films throughout the years have, they've been told this is the story of this side of this coin. This is the story based on this side of the coin. And certainly Gone with the Wind was a story based on the side of the coin of the white, well-to-do plantation owners.
Right.
But if you look at a lot of these Hollywood movies, the movie, Brenda, help me with the name again. I saw the movie, 12 Years a Slave. Am I getting the name right?
Yes.
Which I saw, which was, I'm going to say it was a really good movie based on the way it was done. It was a very powerful story. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Very, very well produced. But that was told on the other side of the coin. So my point is, don't look at a movie and say, well, that's a crap movie because it didn't because it wasn't a documentary. Few movies are documentaries. They're mostly told, from a slanted view of the particular type of the story that the writer chose to tell. Anyway, that's all I want to say.
Christy chimes in. Christy is a regular viewer of the Sunrise Extra program on our Facebook stream. She's Christy, that starts with a C and ends with a Y. Good morning to you, Christy. She says, she starts this by saying, I mean no disrespect by the following comment, but many things in the past are and were hurtful and harmful to many people. Still, to this day, things are hurtful that we can, she said, even to this day, those things that are hurtful are not something we should just remove. She says, this is about lessons and learning from those lessons. It's history, and not all things in history are glorious. So she is against the idea of just erasing or taking away some of these things, be it statue, movie, or otherwise.
I think especially in schools, it's like, Brenda, when you were talking about Huckleberry Finn, and it was probably presented in a way of like, here, we're reading this historic book, and it's about this young boy, and but if you teach that book now, which I think it would be a great, let's foster some discussion. How was, the author back then, how was this story portrayed, and what do you see wrong with that, and really kind of talking about it, and in those list of kind of banned books. Lynn Castile on Facebook, good morning to you, thanks for weighing in. She says, it's terrible that most kids these days don't understand history of this country. Now you take down things that destroy what this country was built on. We can't change the past, so we have to learn from it and make changes now, but it doesn't mean tear things down.
I would argue that even the history books, I was way too old before I found out anything other than Christopher Columbus in 1492 sailed the ocean blue and came over here.
Yep.
You didn't find and don't find that in history books. So yeah, I think that you should tell history, but the history that we have is not an accurate history all the time of what happened.
Yep, exactly.
It is, who was it? It was William Barr. And who was he talking to? When we played clips of that on the news, when he said, history is written by the winners, right? He was talking about something completely different, but he understood, and that is true. History is written by the winners. And it's their take and their particular, I don't know, the way they want it to be, right? I think it's probably that. Not all the time, but in some of those big moments in our history, we don't get the truth of what really happened, and it's really not been until recently that that's been a discussion.
Kim Taylor weighs in this morning. She says, people never want to hear what they are doing wrong or where improvement is needed. She says, or in this case, required. Kids need, in bold letters, need to see where our country has been and an opportunity to implement a better way of doing things. Hiding history only leads to repeating it. Let the people get bristled. She says, learn from our mistakes. Trauma learning is sometimes the only way people do learn.
Yeah, that is true. There are some great lists online, in this kind of discussion of making, kind of Gone with the Wind the poster child now that HBO has pulled it. If we can throw up that list, there's on Instagram. It's called the Gray. Why is it called the Gray Challenge? Does anyone know? That's white and black make gray. There you go. And there are a bunch of movies, 12 movies you should watch instead of The Help, and instead of Gone with the Wind. So 13th, I just saw that on I saw it on there on Netflix. I have not watched it. When They See Us, Just Mercy, King in the Wilderness, Birth of a Nation, Hidden Figures, great movie. Selma, 12 Years a Slave, the Khalif Browder story, Amistad. So those are, great options to learn from instead of some of these other movies. So interesting viewpoints, you guys.
There's a great quote here from one of our viewers, and I knew where she pulled this from when Vicki pulled this quote from the book 1984 by George Orwell, which was published in '49. But again, the book 1984. Every record is the quote starts. Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street building has been renamed. Every date has been altered, and that process continues day by day, minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except the endless present in which the party is always right. And it's true, right? And when you look back, that is the fact of the matter. History has stopped. All we can do now is change the future.
And Kristen kind of agreeing, saying taking down old movies that were made to depict a time period is ridiculous. Use it as a launching pad for discussion. History should be represented by all viewpoints. But yeah, again, it's definitely the viewpoint of the majority at that time.
People still very divided at the bottom line, I think, because we see everything here from keep it, history is history, we need to learn from it, to why the heck would we keep these statues, throw them in the river? I mean,
well, that's what I think the question is like, do you see a difference in statues versus like art forms of books and movies? You know, should the statues be moved indoors to a museum about like, here's, you know, a museum about this time, let's really learn the truth, instead of out in, like you were saying, you know, in front of a city and in a place of honor, versus, you know, a movie that you choose to click play on, and you can kind of take it from it what you want.
Well, that's the question we started with, but I think our viewers seem to be answering a broader picture question here this morning on the stream, and that's the way we like it. We like when you drive the conversation, so we'll have another conversation with you tomorrow on Friday. Sunrise Extra, that's a wrap for today, gang. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.